Welcome to this explainer. Today, I want you to consider me your private asset manager. We are going to bypass all that generic finance talk and completely deconstruct the core structure of assets. We all want to build wealth, but very few people actually understand its fundamental economic composition. So let's dive right into the actual building blocks of what makes an asset truly valuable. To lay a rock-solid foundation for us today, we're turning to the economist A.H. Hansen. He gives us this brilliant, strict definition. He states, and I quote, "Wealth is a stock of goods at a certain time which conform to the requirements of possessing utility, limited in supply, transferability of their ownership from one person to another." This totally reorients how we should be thinking. Wealth isn't just some random pile of cash. It is a measurable stock of income-generating assets at a fixed point in time, things like machinery or land. And to even qualify, an asset actually has to pass a very specific test. And that brings us to these strict entry criteria. If we're building your portfolio, you can't just let any random item get the wealth label. There's an unforgiving 4-point checklist that an item absolutely must clear. If it fails even one of these criteria, it gets kicked straight out of the club. Let's break these down. Okay, so the very first hurdle is utility. Simply put, the asset must provide actual satisfaction or usefulness to its owner. If an item doesn't satisfy a want or a need, well, it's useless to your portfolio. It has to serve a purpose. It has to generate value. But here's the catch. Just being useful isn't quite enough on its own. That leads us right into the second criterion, which is scarcity. The asset must be limited in quantity. Think about it for a second. Sunlight and air have massive utility, right? They literally keep us alive. But because they're freely available in unlimited quantities, they hold no real economic wealth value. Well, unless you somehow figure out how to bottle and sell air. So for our purposes, your asset must be both useful and scarce. Moving on, the next one is transferability of ownership. And honestly, this is a big one. To count as economic wealth, you must be able to legally pass its ownership to someone else. You could have this incredibly rare, highly useful personal skill, like a photographic memory, for example. But because you can't surgically transfer your brain to another person, that skill just isn't classified as economic wealth. The asset itself has to be legally transferable. Finally, we clear the last hurdle. Exchange value. Here is where the whole shebang comes together. Because an asset is useful, because it's limited, and because it can be traded, it possesses an exchange value in the open market. All true wealth must be able to be priced and exchanged. If it checks all 4 of these boxes, congratulations, it is officially wealth. So now that we know the anatomy of a single unit of wealth, let's zoom out a bit to the macroeconomic view. I like to call this the wealth tree, and it's got 3 distinct branches. First up is individual wealth. That's the personal assets owned by a single person, like you. But when you aggregate all of those individuals together, you get social wealth, which is the collective wealth of an entire nation. And then finally, we have national wealth. This is the total stock of all the tangible, real wealth that actually drives the production of goods and services in the economy. Which brings us to how national wealth actually functions. It's basically powered by 2 main engines. On one side, you have reproducible assets. These are man-made items. We're talking machinery, factory structures, and inventories of consumer goods or raw materials. They can be built and they can be multiplied. On the other side, you have non-reproducible assets. These are entirely natural resources. They're free gifts from nature, like land, mineral wealth, and forests. You definitely can't print more land in a factory. But together, the man-made and the nature-made drive an entire nation's production. All right, so we've seen those massive national engines of wealth. Let's zoom back in from that big national level directly to your personal portfolio. In your day-to-day life, how do you actually go about storing this value? Well, we can break down your personal portfolio into 3 highly specific asset buckets. First, there's money. This is your most liquid bucket. We're talking cash, coins, and checking deposits sitting right there in your bank. Second, we have financial assets. This is wealth kept in instruments earning fixed interest or dividends. Think bonds, corporate deposits, or shares of stock. And finally, real assets. This is the tangible physical bucket. It means owning houses, working farms, and operating family businesses. Every single piece of individual economic wealth you own is going to sit in one of these 3 buckets. Which brings us to the ultimate question for you as we wrap up this explainer. How is your personal wealth distributed across these three buckets right now? Are you sitting entirely liquid in that money bucket, or are you heavily weighted in real, tangible assets? You see, understanding the fundamental composition of wealth is just step one, but analyzing how you've actively structured your own utility, scarcity, and exchange value, that is what truly defines your financial future. So take a really hard look at your portfolio today and ask yourself, is your wealth built to last,